think we'll call our December 1st meeting to order. I'll start with a roll call. We'll go in alphabetical order as we did last time. Kathy Brosnan.
Here.
Tom Bukovitz.
Here.
John Decker.
Here.
I am here. Sean Green.
Here.
Sandra Jones. I know you're there, Sandra.
Here.
Thank you. Michelle King.
I pushed the mute and unmute the wrong way.
Okay. And Michelle King.
Michelle, you might have to turn up your volume a little.
Can you hear me?
There you go.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, I'm here.
Thank you. Michael Keister.
Here.
Tom's joining now. John Moran.
Here.
And Jim Stevens.
Here.
Let's see. I thought Tom just joined. All right, so we'll just start out with you, John. Did you want to start with your straw poll?
Yeah, the quick little selectmen's report just to give you guys what's going on right now. We did have some meetings with some different real estate groups for putting up the land on 156 for sale. I think we've come to a decision, but it hasn't been finalized yet, so I won't go to any more details on that. We also had interviews for the new police chief, and we've pretty much made a selection on that. But again, we haven't made that public and finalized yet. Just so you know, that stuff will be coming out shortly. As towards the budget committee, we had a brief meeting last night at the select board before some of us got cut off because of the power outages that were going on in Nottingham. A lot of us lost our internet connections, and we actually tabled the meeting until this upcoming Thursday. But one of the things we were talking about was budget. And ways, to save money. So one of my ideas, which might come across to some people as okay and might not for others, but again, it's an idea. Our town recycling center, which is something that not everybody uses, but it is available to everybody in town to use. And we do promote recycling. We've been promoting recycling in this town since 1974. But one of the things that's happening with recycling now is the money is not there. As the concept is that we could make money off recycling. Well, nowadays, you just can't. You're making money off aluminum cans, but when you take the transportation costs and, cardboard, and it's not, you look at our numbers, which you'll see on the last page of what it costs to run the recycling center. I think that page was $240,000 something or something like that was our cost. In years past, we charged $1, and then we went to give it the stickers away for free. So one thing is, in order to cut that cost, using a ballpark number, I'm not saying 2,000 people will join, but if we charge $20 a year, that's not 50 cents a week to use the recycling center. 50 cents or less for you to go recycle and throw your trash away. Not a big amount, but that could generate anywhere between $30,000 to $40,000 of revenue that we could put towards the recycling center. The building's getting older. It needs more work. The building is from 1976. So, it's 47 years old, or give or take, or 74, whatever we built it. It's like me. We're getting up there in age. These are things that have to be adjusted, where if we don't do something like this, the tax burden is going to fall all back onto the town again. And that cost is going to be there because we don't have the money, and it's going to be another line item that we're going to have to look at on the budget, and something that's going to, again, a slight more increase in everybody's overall taxes. So most towns do have some sort of small fee to use the facilities like this. Again, it won't affect everybody because if you don't use the town dump, you don't have to pay anything. But if you do use it, it's a $20 fee. Once a year when you go register your car or you pay at the dump. Again, we haven't got there yet, but again, I feel that it wouldn't be a huge strain on the people of Nottingham to have a small fee for the process of using the town recycling center. So, again, might not be popular, but it is a way in order to, it's not a service where, when people say they're paying in with their taxes, well, yeah, you pay for the fire department because you need the fire department. You pay for the police department because you need the police department. You're paying in for the highway department because you need somebody to plow your roads. You need somebody to fix your roads. The dump is something where you can find an outside source as trash busters, waste management, do whatever you want. So, which charges significantly more than what the town dump charges, over the course of a year. It's just a way to offset some of the costs. And if you could actually get almost $40,000, you could actually be talking at almost a 20% decrease in what it's costing us to run that facility. So that was my pitch and just my idea. And I'm just curious what people think.
Well, I mean, it doesn't really cut costs, right? It just kind of brings in more revenue by getting townspeople to pay more money. So I would rather see something that actually cuts costs.
Well, we can't cut the more costs.
Well, I mean, you can. So there could be less people employed there. So I don't know how many people employed there, but there's people there that are sorting things and moving things and baling things and preparing things for transport to the recycling companies.
So how would you do it otherwise?
Well, either you have a self-service thing. So I used to live in Pennsylvania, and we just had these big dumpsters essentially, and like the cardboard ones just had a big slot, so it kind of forced you to fold down your cardboard to be able to put it in there. And then the bottles and cans and all that stuff is just a big open dumpster. And there was never any attendance or anything. I think just somebody came by every few days to see if they were getting full, and they'd get trucked out. It was a completely personless operation in most towns. So there's something like that. I don't remember what the number is for how much salary is being paid at the recycling center, but you're paying. It's how much?
You can see it on the list that you should have got from Tim earlier.
Yeah. But I mean, instead of paying people to sort and move stuff, I don't know if they're still. I remember before when they were doing the plastic bottles, that the bottles would get put into like 50-gallon plastic trash bags, and then those would be tied up and those would be moved somewhere else. So you essentially are paying people $10 an hour or whatever to handle pennies worth of garbage. So potentially cutting down on the number of positions or the hours of people that are there actually working on things and trying to more or less automate and self-serve things might be a way to go. I would rather see stuff that can cut costs than just adding more fees and stuff onto people. There's also an issue of enforcement. So I know we have these stickers and everything, but currently there's not people going around policing, making sure you have the sticker on the car. If you start selling these stickers for $20 and now there's some monetary reason to get the sticker, now you got to have these people that are working at the dump. They're going to have to go around policing and getting in confrontations with people if they have the sticker on their car, they don't have the sticker on the car. I don't know if it's really worth it to turn these recycling attendants into enforcement people to make a few $10,000 or whatever you expect it to be. So in that sense, I'm not really a big fan of that idea.
Okay.
And your argument about like, well, you shouldn't have to pay for it if you don't use it, or we should make the people that pay for it use it. I mean, I could use the same argument about the school, right? I don't have any kids. I would love to not pay $8,000 in taxes towards the school.
Absolutely.
So it's just not a great argument. I mean, I like it. No, don't get me wrong. I would love to move to everybody pays for what they use. But so that's my thoughts.
Well, that ain't gonna happen. So, well, no, that's what I'm looking for feedback for that reason, purposely of why. So, I can't think of everything about it. So, feedback what you just provided, Tom, is good to have because I need to see, and we need to see all the different sides.
John, I'm generally supportive of the idea. I do think that the enforcement aspect of it would be difficult, though. I think, with the attendants now having to go around, somebody would have to check as you come in the door. But if you could work that out, it's certainly a way of defraying some costs.
Yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. All right. I agree too that the enforcement would be a big issue, or potentially a big issue. I know a few years back, there was a recycling center study that took like a whole year-ish. I don't remember what all the outcome was of that, and if you guys even looked at that before thinking about this.
No, again, this was just an idea we just came up. It's again, there's nothing going to a vote. There's nothing going out there. It's just again, an idea. That's all. We're just passing up ideas in order to try to find different ways of, cutting costs here, or, again, spreading the buck, however you want to say it, because we used to, it's just a different idea,
So I was looking at the budget here, and there's about $78,000 in salary. There's extra in here for dues and conferences, for uniforms and cleaning and education, and all that stuff. And I mean, if we could streamline it so we don't have to have as many people working there, and there's less handling of the materials, even if we don't get paid. Like, for instance, I don't know if we're getting paid a certain amount for a dumpster full of cardboard. If that's policed and it's very like clean, stacked, folded, flattened cardboard, we get, say, $200 for a dumpster. If there's a way that we can turn in a thing that's, hey, it's supposed to be mostly cardboard, but some people throw beer boxes in there and some of it's not clean. If there's someone who will take that and give us $10, but we don't have to pay someone to clean up and pick and move all that stuff, I think that's a good move. And it makes it simpler for the residents too. They just throw all their stuff into whatever bin and go home.
I
So I
think
think there's a lot of materials that are being recycled that don't actually make any money or don't save anybody anything. Like, it's my understanding that all the glass is basically just being dumped at the sand pit. Is that
true? I'm not 100% sure, but I believe that is the case.
Yeah, so I mean, we got to do a cost benefit of what is it just easier for everybody and cheaper to just throw all the stuff in the landfill than it is to have people being paid hourly to sort the stuff and make sure it's clean and then, call people to come pick it up, or is it just easier to throw out most stuff?
Okay.
Yeah,
like
John.
to chime in, if I may. I have a pet peeve about this whole thing, and I have for many years. The perspective that I take is that whether you use the recycle center or not, you do derive some benefit from it. And the benefit that you derive is that if it costs the users to throw away their trash and recyclables properly, there will be some people who will say, no, I can't do that, or I won't do that, and it ends up in the woods. And the people of Nottingham really don't want to be looking at that every place they drive, and there's enough of that already that we have to pick up during roadside cleanup time, and a lot of people just spend their walks.
Scumbags that live in our town. Those people are scumbags. They don't care. That's what they are. If you're gonna litter and pollute the town, and not do the right thing, you're just a loser and a scumbag. I'm not gonna cut it any other way. Those people, then they don't deserve anything, but whatever. But I agree with you, Michael. There's people that'll litter. I do the litter on 156 every year. There's tons. I won't believe how many beer cans we pick up in bottles.
I hear everybody, but there are some places that make recycling work. We go to Prince Edward Island in the summer, and it is absolutely mandatory for everyone everywhere. They give you bags that you have to put your things that are actually would be compostable, and separate all those things. And they go into a dumpster, and these are for rental properties. They're for everything. We didn't do ours properly, and there was a tag on it that we had to do it over.
Yeah, well,
How I gotta ask, how does
people to wear masks?
like,
So I don't think that's gonna happen.
like, that's not working? That doesn't mean it's cost effective. It's making everybody do a lot of work for literally less than pennies of compost material. I would ask what your definition of the word work is.
Again, I don't want to get this too far off the beaten subject. I know this could be a subject that lasts a while.
Yeah, because I think that's more of an environmental impact debate, and this is budget committee, so I think we're really
True.
Okay,
I just think of that when we have this discussion, that it can't be that prohibitively expensive, or they couldn't afford to do it either.
Well, it's
But
Canada. They tax everybody out the behind for that stuff.
Just pulling it back here to here. I think I don't think that the amount you propose, John, is really crazy. I think it's more the sentiment of, well, here's something else, we have
Sure.
pretty high taxes, and now here's something else that we are paying for. And I think Michael's correct in that. Whatever the reason, people will either start burning more of their trash in their backyard or littering more. But I wonder if there's perhaps a means to combine with another local town, Lee, for instance, or something. And if there's any value in, say trucking right now is being done on a triaxle, it gets done on an actual, a large, dump truck or anything like that, where we can really drive some efficiencies in those disposal costs and get some of those costs down. If we combine it with another town, or can guarantee some higher poundage from the combined towns. I don't know if there'd be interest in that, but that's actual means at some efficiency versus
Well, Stratford Regional Planning has wants us to get into, I think, a part of a study of what other towns are doing in the Stratford regional area on how they're handling their trash and stuff. So again, this is not something that's going to happen anytime soon. It's just something that we have to think about, because again, our building's deteriorating. If you've been inside, you can see it's not the nicest place. So, there's something that's going to have to be done in the future, and it's just how we're going to handle it. So that's why ideas of, streamlining would be good.
Yeah.
What I would hate to see is the fact that, the facility gets closed.
Right.
So we have has anyone looked at like a breakdown of the different, I don't want to say jobs, but tasks that the people at the recycling center are doing? Like, as far as like, how many, if someone's there for the 10 hours a day that it's open, how much of their time is spent on each material? Like how much is spent, working the plastic bottles or organizing this or that?
Well, I think for what we're paying, and I'm nothing against for what it is in the job itself, since it's only a part-time position job, there's no benefits that go into it. There's no to put too much of a pressure on them that, we might not have anybody there anyway.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying a pressure or anything. I'm just trying to get a sense of what materials are we paying people a lot of money to handle and organize and keep clean that aren't really valuable. And if we were to not police them as much, so say with the cardboard, if we went from baling it and making sure it's all clean and flat and doesn't have any paper inside of it, how much less money do we get for that if we just have a big bin that people throw it in?
Yep.
I think that's the kind of thing that needs to be kind of.
We do actually have a pound. We do actually have a report of that, which we get how much we're made off recycling the aluminum cans, how much we made off cardboard, how much we're getting per pound. And there was some too, because we had an issue where we had to keep all that cardboard under cover, because once it got wet, the value of the cardboard went to nothing. So that's a concern.
Is that a report I can find on the website, or do I just ask?
No, but I believe we
Chris?
do have it in the town. I'll try to, if I can find it, I'll give it to you. I'll send it
All
to
right,
you.
yeah, if I can get a copy of that, I can take a look at it and see.
And Lee, just before moving, Lee was doing a lot in this effort and has a lot of kind of public information on it as well, Tom, for value of materials and so forth, and where additional costs were coming from on solid waste disposal.
Because the last time the town actually, sorry, Jim, didn't mean to cut you off.
No problem.
The last time the town did something in order to cut the cost of the recycle center is we went from a 5-day work week to a 3-day work week. So that was and then we cut all the full-time employees. So that saved us significant to where we are today. Again, it's just an area where, we're going to look at what we can cut from the highway. We're going to look at where we can cut everything, without sacrificing, services to the town that need to be there. So, because when you see our budget and stuff like that, we're paying, we're going to be pretty flat, which is nice. You won't see us like the school at 7.5%, but that's another issue.
It's great. Thank you.
All right, so I'm all set. If everybody's good, if they've got their things, I'm very happy. I thank you guys for your responses, and I guess we can continue on unless anybody has any questions for me on anything else regarding the town. We're good to move on to the next section.
John, I just add one thing is just on the enforcement side, I would definitely agree. I mean, I don't mind paying $20 to go to the dump a year. I don't think
Yep.
that's anything abnormal even for other towns that charge $5 or $10. But I know that when we charged $1, that didn't work, and there was no enforcement, and people tried to enforce it, didn't work. And then even the clear bags, to be honest,
Yeah, that doesn't work either.
that doesn't work either. And I know it was tried to be enforced. I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago. There was somebody there making sure that people dumped out all their trash into a clear bag, and it did not go over well. And it was, and to Tom's point, it was an employee, there
Oh, yeah.
getting paid $10 an hour that's trying to enforce something the select board passed.
I would not like to see that happen anyway, and again, you're hoping that if 2,000 people use the dump, you would like to see that 1,800 people would feel that it's okay to pay the $20. And it's kind of just like another way to help out, but again, if people don't, it is what it is, I mean, no one's always going to believe all the laws and enforce everything the way it is. Some people will do it because it's the right thing to do. Other people will do it because they won't do it because they disagree with it. It's the same as like Michael said before. Somebody will throw their trash out the window and not think anything of it. All of us will say, wow, we look at as that as being horrible, but that's just how people are. So
Yeah, I
understand
think
the
I
enforcement.
think the problem is just that you're adding onto the job description of the recycling attendants that they're now enforcement officers, and they gotta get up in people's faces and
Well, I did we
be
have
confrontational.
Understandable. I mean, I take it what you're saying with but I gotta, like before, we never enforced it. There's a lot of things that aren't enforced that are happening. So, we're supposed to, but again, I digress. We can digress on this enough. Let's get back to the budget side of it.
All right, thanks, John.
Yeah.
So I did send out the default budget for the town. So as a reminder for those of you that might not be familiar, the default budget is what would fall into play if the budget does not get passed at town meeting, or not town meeting, the deliberative session, sorry. So if that doesn't get passed, we fall to the default budget. So that has to be presented as well to the town. Does anybody have any questions? I think it's pretty straightforward for the town side of things, but does anybody have questions for John on the default budget or the budget in general for the town?
Excuse me.
I haven't had the opportunity to go through it yet, so
It'll look very familiar to you, John.
yeah. Well, it should look pretty much like last year.
Yeah, $3,000 reduction.
Mhm.
Tim and John, if I may, when I looked at what I presume to be a very simplistic analysis for what the default budget should be, I commend Chris Sterndale on his adherence to the letter of the law, but I think that there are some places that he probably didn't understand the way the school operates, and it's entirely different. And I know a lot of
But
what
that
the
doesn't
school
mean the
does-
school's right.
That's right, I know. But for example, if the cost of electricity is expected to go up 5% in the following year, you budget for that 5%, and you don't expect the default budget to absorb that difference if the budget fails. You expect the
Right.
default budget to include that 5%.
Yes, because that's a contracted service.
Well, it's not only a contracted service, but it's necessary for the operation. And I would go as far as to say that it takes a lot more analysis of line by line. But for example, you probably will budget more for, say, property insurance liability. That is a line item in the town. Typically goes up a few percent every year. And I expect that if you held that to last year's number and tried to pay that premium, they wouldn't accept it and they'd cancel your policy. So,
Right, and that's the thing that we have to weigh in with the regular budget, and that, because those numbers would go in the regular budget, so it should carry back to the default, like insurance costs. Those are contracted things that are supposed to match. You get the same. You have to pay for that same level of service.
and that wasn't done in the simplistic analysis that was first shot at it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that needs to be considered, Michael.
Any other feedback on the default? So I think what we could do is, I know I had mentioned, I think by 7:15, we're going to be joined by Chris Sousa, Dr. Monica Henson, and Nate Byrne, who did join. He's on mute right now, but they'll be joining us at 7:15. Do we want to move ahead the agenda and review and accept the minutes from November 5th of 2020?
Yep, I motion we approve them as written.
I
Oh.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 I'm just gonna go around.
Yeah.
So apparently that's what I'm supposed to do. Kathy Brosnan,
Yes.
Tom Bukovitz,
Aye.
John Decker.
Yes.
I would say yes. Sean Green,
Yes.
Sandra Jones,
Yes.
Michelle King.
That last meeting.
Okay. Michael Keister,
Yes.
Tom LeVay,
Yes.
John Moran,
Yes.
and Jim Stevens.
Yes.
Okay. Everybody opposed, so the minutes have been approved.
Tim,
Yes.
I noticed you said my last name correct tonight.
Yes, Michael corrected me. I apologize. You should have corrected me like, I don't know, a year ago.
While there's just a brief lull, I let Tim know. I just want to give everybody a quick heads up that I found out earlier today. I have to jump on a work call at 7:30, so I'm going to jump off. I'll be off from like 7:30 to about 8:15, and then I'll have to jump back on. I apologize, but it was the only time that I have to get it done. So I will be gone for a little bit, and then I'll be back.
Thanks, Sean. So why don't we take a look at the schedule while we're waiting for them to join? I know I did send it out, but so our next meeting on Thursday, we're going to be reviewing the default budget for the school. I'm not sure how long that will take, but before I submit the agenda to Kelly to get posted on the town website, I'm wondering if after the presentation tonight, if we want to add to that agenda, reviewing the school budget as a committee. And that might save us a meeting in December.
That's probably a good idea.
I'm just not sure. I'm not sure how long it will take to review the default budget. I don't want to make the meeting 5 hours long on Thursday night, but I have a feeling it won't.
The one that the budget we just got in the email here, is that the default or is that the new budget?
No, so we had to flip-flop those two because they didn't have the default budget yet, but they had the proposed budget. So tonight we're reviewing the proposed budget. So that's why I was thinking if we review that, if they present it, it might give us time on Thursday after they present the default budget to actually, have just more discussion on that potentially.
Could you just clarify the file name that you're referencing, Tim? Which was which?
We don't have the default budget yet, Jim.
Okay. Thanks.
So the only thing that you have seen is that's their proposed budget for 2021-22.
So you're asking if we want to go over the proposed budget on Thursday instead of today?
No, I'm sorry if I'm confusing you. So we're going to go over that proposed budget today, but one of the meetings we had scheduled for, I finally was able to get this to load up here, December 29th was the review of the school budget if necessary, because we would have had everything presented to us. One of the things that has been presented to me as well is we might not need this meeting, the school department heads, because the school department head essentially is Mr. Sousa. He's the one that everything gets submitted to. So there's two meetings in there that we could potentially, it gives us a little more wiggle room, number one. But I'm just saying, Tom, is that the budget committee review the school budget, which is presented tonight, which is their first draft, I know, but we could have more discussion after the meeting on Thursday, if time permits itself. Or,
That's,
I'm sorry, go ahead, John.
I was going to say that sounds fine. That sounds reasonable.
Okay. Because I mean, I don't know if, again, I think we had 2 drafts at least presented to us in the past. So I know this is all different, it's all compressed. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, John or Michael, do we need to consider one of these meetings, an additional meeting with the administration of the school to review their final budget that we'll be planning on presenting on January 12th?
Yes.
I would think so.
Yeah, we do normally have the principal and the superintendent kind of go over the final one with us close to the end. So
Before the public hearing.
right before the
Yes.
public hearing.
Yeah. So then maybe this on the Thursday, the 17th, that's what we would consider having is the review with them.
Yes.
I believe that the board is planning on.
Tim, another thing that's coming from the school that needs a significant time slot someplace is the discussion about the Space Facilities Committee and the bond hearing that's coming up for the school expansion. And that, I don't know if Susan Levinson has already contacted you about this, but she's going to need some time, and I think she might even be looking at this coming Thursday to come in and talk a little bit about what we were expecting for budget for that expansion and the bond. And we're getting closer to getting final numbers on that. But as soon as we do, we need to make plans for getting the budget committee's approval on that and get that all set for when we go to bond.
So Michael, wouldn't it make sense then for Sue or whoever to present to us once they have the final number together? Or will that not be until it's too late?
It'll be pretty late. We have a construction manager on staff now to be developing that number, and he's working that. Hopefully by the end of December, he will have that final number that's needed for the state application, the state aid application. And then it's all getting jammed into a real tight time frame because the state will make their selections of projects to fund in the very first couple weeks of January and determine whether or not we will get funding for the project from the state capital aid. And that will have a lot to do with what the bond amount will be, because it's going to be including the taxpayer money and hopefully the money from the state grant.
This is going to sound terrible to ask, but I'm going to say it anyways. Why is it taking them so long to do this? This project's been out. I mean, we've been talking about this project for, I mean, after the proposal of the stages to get this number in. Why is it taking all the way to the last minute? Why hasn't this guy who's ever putting this together finished it by now?
Well, it all has to mesh with the architectural plans.
But those were done a while ago, weren't they?
What's that?
Again, Mike, I'm not pointing this towards you. Not your problem.
No.
I'm asking why who's ever in charge of this has not done their due diligence in getting this in a proper time instead of waiting at the 11th hour.
Well,
it is basically the 11th hour because it's 11. I mean, we're going into December, doing a month.
We spent the bulk of the time until the end of June putting together the state application. And that had to meet that July 1 deadline, and we did. Then we started looking at any refinements that we need to make to the design. And the architect was working on that and very responsive to the feedback. And we have done this in something of a vacuum in not being able to involve the public because of COVID and such. We're working, there's a number of people that are working on a communications subcommittee so that we do involve the town.
Sure.
And that's going on concurrently. And the monies for the construction manager weren't available until that past town meeting last June.
When we get it, how many, we're basically gonna have one meeting to discuss it and that's it? Or will we have two?
How many would you like? We'd like more too.
It depends when we see it and when it's due. It shows up, January 5th, it's not gonna leave us any time.
Agreed.
If it shows up December 25th, that still don't leave us any time.
And I would very much like a presentation to the budget committee with everything we have to date, regardless of final figures. But we've got a real compressed schedule with the budget committee as well. So having to, work our time in around the regular budget schedules is, we don't want to monopolize the budget committee meeting several times.
Michael, is the construction manager working on the not to exceed price? Is that
That's correct.
their
Yes.
deliverable?
Yes.
And then based on what the architect had said previously, I mean, we have an estimate, but they couldn't really nail down what class the estimate was as far as if it's a 20% delta or a 30% delta or 10% delta. But if we could get some clarification from the architect on what their current estimate is, on what class it is, then we could have a pretty good indication, taking the high side with some risk, where that would land. It would also be a nice metric to compare to what the construction manager comes back at. Michael was at the presentation a few months ago there that, there was one figure, and then that figure has, increased, I guess, every time I've seen any of the plans or notes around the building. So I think it's important to have something like that to gauge what the construction manager is presenting for a not to exceed price.
And the meeting that we had last Thursday afternoon was a lot of discussion that the construction manager was wanting to warn the committee that they're anticipating some increases in materials and labor come next July that will have a significant impact on our budget.
Yeah.
And he's concerned that the taxpayers may not be likely to pass something that's up in the $7 million range. Now, I say that not knowing exactly where it's going to land, but from that concern, we spent a good chunk of the meeting talking about whether or not it was feasible to remove the planned extension to the two-story structure to the north side. There's a small two-story addition that was on the plans for that, fairly expensive per square foot because it's the way it has to be isolated from the structure, the original structure, and it was kind of a small area to begin with, so its cost per square foot was significant. We were talking about whether we should scrap that whole idea to bring the project cost down, and if we did that, where would we absorb the planned activity that was going into those spaces around elsewhere in the building? Things like that are going on at these meetings. So it's tough to get it all together and get the final figures when there's a lot of fluidity in the plan based on real concerns.
Michael, I just have a couple of questions. Have the architectural plans, are they still changing, or, I mean, it seems like this thing is in a constant revolution, you know, do we have firm plans that were?
No, we don't. We've got some that are looking pretty likely, but it's going to depend a little bit on the total project cost, whether it's still feasible to have the amount of additional spaces that we're hoping to get. And if we don't get that space, what are we going to do to the programs, the educational programs that need that space? Yeah, the plans are fluid. There was a discussion a few weeks ago about the wetlands area causing the back loop road to need to be revised according to where it would fit around the new structures. Yeah, it's fluid.
And based off those initial plans and the total square footage being touched, we're at about $430 or so a square foot as it sits now. Or is there a figure on that yet? That was my rough figure.
And that figure was from back in last February and March.
Mhm.
And that was pre-COVID. A lot of prices have changed since then. As you know, the companies that are competing with each other for jobs are going elsewhere, out of business, having trouble getting labor. You know, there's not as much surety on what the construction costs would have been had that price been fixed back in March.
And that dollar per square foot, that's sort of on the high end of the range to begin with, right?
Do you think
Sounds
so?
like it's only going up.
We're being told otherwise.
Okay.
So I think maybe what we could do is add this to our larger discussion. John Decker, you had mentioned that Sue Levinson wanted to present. I would recommend that maybe that she reach out, but we could potentially add that to an agenda item for December 17th, is to have that presentation done at that point in time.
Yeah, I think that was Michael that said she was going to present, but
I'll take that back
sorry.
I'll take that back to Susan and see if that's going to work for her.
Okay.
I think it probably will. Perhaps that'll give the communications subcommittee time to put together a presentation for the budget committee.
Okay. So at this time, I'd like to welcome our school administration, Dr. Monica Henson, the superintendent, Nate Byrne, and our principal, Chris Sousa. Welcome. And I think, Monica, you wanted to present some slides first, and then we'll go through the budget, and then we'll be able to have the committee ask questions.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you so much. And hello to all the committee. It is an absolute pleasure to be here. So will I be able to screen share?
I think you should be able to.
Okay.
Let's see.
All right, let's see. Yes, I can. Give me 1 second I was getting ready to screen share the Stratford proposed budget. I just came out of their meeting. Okay. That wouldn't be very helpful for y'all. And you should be seeing a slide that says Superintendent's Executive Summary.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right, good. Thank you. And it just takes a second to get it going when I'm on Zoom. Okay. We have provided You all, in the interest, I just want to say to the committee that we are offering you complete transparency from the school district. What you received was our true rough draft first pass at a budget. We felt that in partnership with the town, that it's important that you see our process as we go through it. So we didn't try to pretty it up and pull things out. We said, here's our first pass, let's show it to them. And so my slides, and I just have a few, will just summarize with you a few of the things that are out of our control. And then I'll talk about where we want to go with our next draft of the budget. And then we will be able to provide you the default budget very soon as well. But there are certain building-based increases that are contractual in nature, that are federally required. Proposed salary increases are based on the collective bargaining agreement, and that applies to our teachers, our administrative support staff. We do have other support personnel that are not part of collective bargaining, and we have tried to be as circumspect as we can, but we do have contractual obligations we have to fulfill. We are going to have some increases in our anticipated special education services and staffing. So those are some things inside the building that we just have to work around those things. And I know you saw that when you were looking at the document. There are some external factors that are impacting our budget. The costs of software and technology, obviously. Those are things that we can't really control. We are looking very closely at technology items that perhaps we could defer. The transportation increase of 3% from Dale Transportation Company is not reflected in the draft that you received, because we received today their proposed contract extension, and they are proposing a 3% increase. The school board will have a committee that will negotiate with Dale Transportation. I would like the town budget committee to know that I pushed back pretty hard on that 3% because the cost of fuel is not increasing at that rate. But the school board committee will push back, I'm sure, harder than I have, and we'll see what happens with transportation. We do have some tuition increases for our high school children. The Co-Brown Northwood Academy voted a 3.99% rate increase. And then we have anywhere from 3 to 5% increases in our public schools. And so the total amount of tuition that we'll be paying next year is going to be a 22% increase. And that has to do with enrollment in addition to the tuition increases. There is quite an alarming and major increase that has come from the New Hampshire retirement system. And I know you've probably seen on the news, but I know y'all are much more aware of the finance in New Hampshire than I, having recently come up here from Atlanta. But they completed the biennial actuarial revaluation, and the aggregate increase from the last biennial was 19.6%. That's a dramatic jump. And it is having a substantial impact on employer contribution rates. And our teacher rate that the employer is on the hook for now for teacher retirement is more than 21%. Something that we can do, if it would be helpful, the New Hampshire School Administrators Association is providing free of charge a couple of their retirement experts who will speak to school boards and town boards. And if that's something that you all would like for me to arrange, I can certainly invite them to come and talk with you if you want to know more about the specifics of that valuation. So what we presented to you again was a true first draft. And it was a $14.8 million and change total annual budget with an aggregate increase of a little more than $1 million, which was 7.6% overall. This is not the budget that we will put in final form. The school board's goal is a 4% increase. And they met today in their budget work session, and we worked for a few hours on identifying lines for revision, and they were able to estimate initial reductions in this work session of a little over $125,000. The board is willing to tap reserves if needed, and they have returned the draft budget with the estimated initial line decreases to the building administration. And building admin is going to be working on additional revisions at their level. And we will be able to provide you all with the default budget after the school board meeting tomorrow night. So that concludes my slideshow. And I hope that that was helpful for you to just get a little bit of an overview. And I do have my team here tonight. I'm going to stop screen sharing so we can all see each other. I do have the Director of Student Services, who is our special education expert, Nate Byrne, and then the building principal, Chris Sousa, is here as well. And we would be happy to answer the questions that you all might have.
Yeah, I got a question here. The default budget, what % increase is that over last year's budget?
I actually haven't seen it yet. It's been sent out. I just got home. I drove up from Atlanta and just got home, logged right into the Stratford budget work session, logged with y'all, and I haven't even opened the default budget to take a look.
Okay, but it's something like 4%, isn't it?
I don't know. I haven't even looked at it. I don't know. I'm hoping that it's in that name. That would mean that our reductions are in line with what the default would recommend.
Yeah. So I mean, it looks like from financial year 18-19 to 20, it was a 6.6% increase in the school's budget. And then up to last year, this current year, it was a 7.6% increase to the budget. And then this first draft that you've given us is a 7.5% increase to the budget. And I mean, honestly, you gotta control this inflation. Like, this is year over year after year, more than double the inflation rate. This is not sustainable. If this was a business, you would be bankrupt. But I mean, unfortunately for the taxpayers, you can demand as much money and they have to pay it or else they lose their home. So I'm just kind of interested, like, where can we cut this budget? I would like to deliver. I think we have a responsibility to taxpayers of this town to deliver them a budget that is a true alternative to the default budget. I don't want people to go in on election day and be given a choice between the default budget, which is a $500 tax hike, and this budget, which is a $500 tax hike. I want to give people an actual option. I mean, families, we're in an economic crisis. I mean, families everywhere are tightening their belts, and the town and the school need to do that too. So I would challenge you to try to at least get this to a 0% increase, so that we're not hiking people's taxes. And the town has done a really good job controlling their budget. I would really appreciate it if the school could do the same.
Just a question, from the increases in salaries due to the contract that they have, how much is that in dollar amounts, roughly?
Total dollar figure in increase?
Just in salaries.
121,000.
Thank you, Nate.
Yep, $121,899.12. That is just your regular ed.
Okay, I was looking for a number for all departments.
Yeah, that would take a little time to calculate because they're broken out by section. I can you know, we could possibly do that, but it is broken out by section. So you have your 1100s, your regular ed, then you have your 1200s special ed. They're broken out in different sections
Right. No,
for
I
your
know that.
salaries. It's something we could look at putting together.
Well, the reason I asked that is for us to go to a level funded budget, those contracts for teachers are automatic. So whatever that number is for all the salaries plus all of their benefits, you're looking at trying to cut out of the rest of the budget that amount in order to come out with a 0%. And I think that's a pretty big challenge.
Well, if you can't do anything to stop, if we're somehow contractually, we can't do anything about these increases in salary, because I don't know, most people probably aren't getting raises this year. But if you're telling me that we can't, there's nothing we can do about any of these increases in costs because it's all in some contract, then maybe we need to lay someone off. Like you can't just keep jacking the costs up this much. Like you're gonna take people's homes away from them.
Mhm. Well, the default budget is going to reflect the just pure. My understanding of it is it's going to be the purely contractual obligations. In order to get to a 0 increase with the contractual obligations, I don't see any way to be able to do that without reduction in staffing.
Well, maybe that's the unfortunate thing that has to be considered. Is there, I mean, where can we cut this budget? Because it sounds like a lot of things are just, we can't do anything about, we can't touch that. We can't control those cost increases. So, I mean, I'm looking at this budget, you know, what can we cut?
Every time we go to cut positions, that means less children we can keep in the building, because right now we can't have all the children in the building. Some of our children have chosen to be at home and their families have that right, and we still have to educate them. So we have teachers that is their job right now. So, you know, what would you like us to do with our children?
I mean, you're the one that runs the school. You tell me, but I mean, we can't just keep raising the taxes 8% a year. I mean, inflation rate's like 2 or 3%. You're outpacing inflation. The school tax
Our
rate
moral
is like double in
responsibility,
10.
our moral responsibility is to educate the children in the best possible way we can. That's a moral responsibility.
Well, you also have a moral responsibility not to price people out of their homes.
Excuse me, Nate, can I ask you a question on special education? What's the average caseload per teacher to students? Like on their caseloads for like IEPs, or I mean, you know how many?
You're looking at about 15.
15.
13 to 15 on your average caseload.
And there's a number of how many. So how many do we have in special education now?
How many students? I have to pull that up. I don't want to misquote it. I want to say it's right in the 60 range.
About that, yeah.
Okay.
So if we went down one person, it would go from 15 to 20 per caseload.
I'd have to look at that. But what I would caution you against is you become less of a teacher and more of a paper pusher when you have too many students to your special ed caseload. The object of keeping your caseloads low is so that you can provide direct instruction and the specialized instruction that your special ed students need. When you start taking that instruction and giving more students to the teachers who are trying to teach the most vulnerable students, you are robbing those students of that education that they need. You're actually going to go backwards in their special education. If you were to ask me, and this is my own personal bias, special education would be the last area that you would cut a teacher.
Not my wife is a special education director for extra.
Okay, so I'm
asking more information so I can use what you're saying to me now as a crutch for where they're at. So
no, I got what you're saying. Sorry, I wanted to be clear when it said if we cut one, we could increase the numbers. You could. It would just be detrimental to the students.
Because the next question
Nate, does New Hampshire have a limit on the number of students? I know other states I've worked in, there is a limitation on
Is not.
special education students that teachers can serve?
No, there is not. What you have to do too is you have to, and I don't want to preach to the choir. I'm sorry, but what I want to make sure is clear is you can't look at just the caseload. You also have to look at the severity of services delivered.
Right.
So if you're looking at one, and this is not your school, but what I'm trying to say is you could have one teacher who has 5 students and another one who has 15, and the one who has 5 is doing more work with those students just because of the severity. That's it.
Sure.
So tomorrow, if I may, tomorrow there's a school board meeting, and this will be a topic of conversation. I'll be spending the day tomorrow. We've already begun to look at areas that we want to reduce. And Tom, to your point as well, we're going to look deeper to see what we would have to be. And those are going to be options we talk about. Staffing is certainly, everything's on the table. I mean, everything is on the table when we have these discussions. And it's just a matter of seeing, how much do we want to give? Because for every dollar you lose, there's always obviously some kind of offset. Hopefully nothing that impedes the level and the quality of education that we've worked so hard over the last 7 years to get at. So that's the balancing point. And we're still at the very beginning of the stage as far as a board level and a group discussion.
I believe class size has a lot to do with the number of teachers you need as well.
Exactly.
If I might add something that the committee here needs to understand, running a school is expensive, and much of the costs that are involved are contractual costs. We got the salaries, we got the tuition, and we got special education, and all of that comprises probably 90% of the total cost of running the school. That's a rough estimate, but you get what I mean. Most of the costs of running the school are contractual, and for us to be able to have any kind of control over that increase year over year is really something that the budget committee does not have control in, and has not been ever expected to have control in, because of we don't write the contracts, we don't agree to the contracts, we live with the contracts.
So Michael, I hear this every time. It's always, most of this stuff we can't touch. We don't have any control because it's all a contracted thing. And I just don't understand how we control costs if everything is somehow out of our hands. What can we do to get things out of these contracts? What can we do to make it so we have actual discretion on things and we control cost increases, we control salary increases? What do we do to get out of this stranglehold of everything is a contract and it's all been negotiated and we can't actually change anything? How do we stop that?
Stop sending kids to high school, stop admitting kindergartners into the building.
I mean, a real solution, like how do we not have everything be some sort of contract that we can't change?
Yes.
I mean, aren't we the people supposed to be in charge of these things? How come somehow every time we want to change, we want to control costs, we're told that it's all a contract, it's all been negotiated, we have no control over this? What do we do? How do we change this?
You're living in a collective bargaining state, which is why there is a contractual issue regarding salaries. And you had mentioned if we were running the school as a business, the school actually is a nonprofit business, and we are required to run it in the black. In any business, but particularly a nonprofit business, and in the school world, 90 to 95% of your costs are lodged in salaries and benefits of staffing. That's why it's so difficult to try to make the kind of changes that you're talking about. Now, if you wanted to look at decreasing the number of staff, again, you look at increasing your class sizes. And part of the reason that people want to put their children in school in a town like Nottingham is because of the ratio of children to adults. They don't want to put their children in a classroom with 35 kids in a class.
So you're saying we could kill 2 birds with 1 stone. If you reduce the number of teachers, class sizes go up and less people move into town specifically to come for the school?
I think that it's, if you talk to real estate agents, you would certainly hear that schools, the perceived quality of the school and class size for a lot of parents is a big issue. The perceived quality of the school determines the real estate pricing and the desirability of the neighborhoods.
Sure, but on the flip side of that coin, when you're getting an $8,000 property tax bill every year, that's a negative on that property. If the town controlled costs and the school was run affordably, then it would also be attractive to buy property in this town because it would be a low tax rate town, which it used to be. When I first moved here, it was very affordable. And since then, the taxes have pretty much doubled. And it's almost all due to the school. So your target number one, I mean, this is what needs to be fixed. This cost increase cannot continue to go up 7 or 8% every year. And you say you run it like a business and we have to be in the black, but you tell me what other business at the end of the year figures out how much money they need and then goes to the taxpayer and divides it up and says, all right, everybody give us, this is how much money we need. That's it. And you have no competition. You have no choice. No one has any choice. They all have to pay for it. So,
well, we do actually have quite a bit of competition in terms of virtual and other forms of charter schools and private schooling.
But when people choose to go to a private school or a charter school or Montessori or anything else, they're still forced to pay for the public school. So it's not really competition when they still have to pay you.
Mm-hmm.
What was the teacher increase from the contract as a percent?
It looks salaries 5.6%.
5.6.
No,
5.6%.
no, but that's not the negotiated percent that they got. What else is in that number? Is that an increase in staff as well?
Well,
Should be step and grade or whatever it's called.
Yeah, I was gonna say we had 4 step increases. We had, I'm just looking at my notes. We had step increases, which are part of the contract. We had 4 track changes, and we have 2 retirement payouts that are accumulated sick days and retirement severances.
Retirements
Have driven that number up to 5.6%.
The retirement shows up in the salary?
Yes, that shows up in the 5.6% obligation increase.
It does?
There's a separate line for retirement.
Yeah, line 5232.
Yeah, I expected a separate line, I thought.
1100,000.
Those are contributions to active teachers.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
The retirement payouts are a separate item. Those are going to be paid to the employees. The line that you're referencing is the employer contribution into the system.
So teachers that are at the top step, what was their cost of living increase? Because that's the only thing they get from the contract.
I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head.
I can tell you, as a 32-year teacher myself, I would say the last 10 years of my career, I did not even get an increase because between the cost of insurance going up and the 2% I got for cost of living, I didn't have a raise for about 10 years. So those are the facts. I would also say I'm against increasing class sizes because, again, as a longtime teacher, the teacher's job has increased dramatically over the last, I would say, 10 years, maybe 15. And teachers are not just teaching anymore. They're doing so many other functions. And to have larger class sizes, it just decreases their ability to be effective with the kids they have in front of them. So if anything, we should be reducing class sizes.
What is this line 1410? There's co-curricular salaries. I see like 14,000 for club positions, like art club, drama club. Are these teachers, or what are these?
Those are stipends that are paid for the sponsors of activities.
What does the sponsor of an activity mean?
A basketball coach would be an example.
All those functions are done after school.
Well, those look like they're in a separate line. Those are down in 1420. I see athletic stipends. So that's another
Tom, we have
18,000,
both.
47,000.
Yeah, Tom,
So I
there's
mean,
both.
here's a potential area where you could get, say, 10% of your needed cuts. I mean, you got 23,000 or so. Oh, actually, there's other things in there. So that's like the co-curricular salaries thing. Looks like it's about 32,000. Athletic looks like it's about 40 some thousand. I don't know what Summer Institute is, but there's another 4,000 there. So I mean, potentially you could get 80,000 or so by cutting some of these things.
Are you suggesting, Tom, that we would not offer our students any extracurricular activities in order to save
It depends. I mean,
$80,000?
I don't know if we need to be paying for extracurricular activities.
What extracurricular activity would you like to be in charge of, Tom?
None.
Well, see?
Yeah,
Would you do it free?
I'm sure that there's plenty of parents that would do it for free. I mean, have you tried to get people to volunteer to
Yes,
manage
we
activities
have.
and things?
Yes, we have.
Good luck.
I'm just curious if you could explain, what was the line item with one additional, 55,64,001.94 was a 42%, 41.6% increase.
May I ask what line you're looking at, Jim?
Sure, line 94, function 1200, object 5564, special ed tuition, non-public elementary.
Thank you.
Yeah, that is a out of district placement for a special education student. There are multiple students who are placed out of district because your school could not meet their needs safely or academically. So that is a contractual obligation, not to our staff, but to a different building to provide those special educations for our students.
Okay. And is there a means with this proposed building addition or anything to bring any of that back in-house, or is that something that's just wholly beyond the capability that the school has now?
Okay.
Well, if I can comment on that, Nate, we have talked about that, Jim. Looking at space, creating our own alternative programs has been a topic of conversation for the last 6 or 7 years. There will always be students that don't fit into public education's abilities. But yes, if we could reduce, we do quite a bit as far as reducing our out-of-district placements. They've gone down over the years, and our special ed numbers decline as they go up in grade because of our RTI program. Many students in other schools, their numbers actually increase special ed as they go through K-8, ours decrease. So that is part of our goal. Whether or not this addition will offer us the space to do that, I really can't say until we see what the final plans are going to be.
Okay, thank you. I was just curious on the really the spread between, so that's about 80,000 per student versus the other special ed tuitions at the other schools.
Yeah, it's
Just
expensive.
curious where that comes from, that large delta.
The cost for the special ed children when they're referred out depends upon the severity of their needs too. And schools that can deal with those very severe needs have a higher tuition.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to just point out that you have the first blush draft. The board did work to remove and lower that number for you for the district. So I do have a new number for that line. It has gone down, not as low as what we would like, obviously, but we were able to make it so that it's only an $8,600 increase.
Well, that was some good work. Thanks.
So I'd like to get back to, because I scrolled down here, I saw had some more notes here for these extracurricular or co-curricular and athletic things. I see there's $1,400 here for Legos, and there's stipends in here for cheerleading and skiing coaches and things. It's my understanding with Claremont decision, the Supreme Court of New Hampshire says that we have a duty to provide an education to all educable students, but I don't think we have any constitutional duty to provide Legos or extracurricular activities and skiing instruction. I think maybe something to consider is to, instead of using taxpayer money to pay for a skiing coach or Legos, that these be offered as a optional thing that parents can sign up for, but they would be asked to pay a fee or a due to cover the cost of running these programs. And I think not only will that take some of the burden off the taxpayer and get you a little closer to not increasing the budget this much, but that'll also kind of reveal which of these programs are actually truly, you know, desired by the community, because you'll see who actually wants to pay for these things.
Well,
And that becomes who can afford to pay for these things.
Exactly.
Well,
It raises
unfortunately,
an
that's the way the
equity
world
issue.
works. Everything isn't free. It would be great if we had, you know, everything for free, but unfortunately things cost money, and we're required to provide an education, and we're not required to provide Legos or skiing instruction.
well, as a matter of fact, the Lego League was started by a group of parents, and most every year, I believe Chris can verify this, but almost every year we get a grant for that. But we put the money in because we have so many children that want to participate in Lego League that we put that money in, so we make sure the children get to enjoy and learn from this Lego League. But hopefully that won't be used or totally used, that we will get a help with that from the outside.
Well, I would say ask the parents to contribute some money for these non-academic pursuits. This is not the core function of government. This is not, you know, a constitutionally mandated education thing. This is Legos. Like, I mean, kids would also love to be provided with free video games, I'm sure, but that's just not what the taxpayers are required to pay for. I mean,
Legos
you're
is a
$1
very
million over budget. You're increasing the budget another $1 million. You have to cut something.
Yeah, and I mean, I just want to comment that I think all these, you know, I have kids in school, and you know, the extracurricular activities are great. I think Tom's point is just perhaps out of the things we can't control, maybe these are some where there's some savings to be had, you know, and so, you know, there must be some line items that we can really look to drill into, and perhaps, you know, perhaps this is some of them.
Yeah, I would agree with both of you. I mean, I think, you know, tonight we're not going to really be debating a lot of these things. We're just taking notes on some of the input you're giving on, and a lot of this will come up in the work that the administrative team does tomorrow, and then at the board meeting tomorrow night. So I'm just happy to get some of the feedback.
I was just going to ask on, I had a question about some of the supplies, and it's very low dollar overall out of the budget, but is that yearly that changes? Seems like we have three to one spending on gym, art, and music supplies over language arts, math, science, and social studies supplies. I'm just kind of curious if that's from just the need. Is that more needs based, or is that how are those numbers generated?
It becomes the nature of the classes. Many of the academic classes are supply light, for lack of a better term. I mean, art, obviously, there's a tremendous amount of consumables,
sure,
because you're using all those materials up. So that's probably easier to understand. Music, we've been in a hole for quite some time. We used to provide all the instruments to every single band member. And one of the things we started doing a couple of years ago was having parents, if they want certain instruments, rent them themselves through specialized leases through private companies outside of us. And so we are doing some of that work, and to try and, you know, shift some of those costs to those who might need it. But there are some instruments that they can't provide and that we do want to make sure we're updating. And so we're slowly building back a supply chain and being responsible as far as how we're doing that fiscally. So music has a little bit up. Art is going to always be, again, a little bit more, or quite a bit more actually, because of the consumables. And PE classes, because of the nature of the equipment being used very vigorously and enthusiastically by K-8 kids, oftentimes you have to keep buying, floor hockey sticks because they don't last. But there again, they're more heavy on materials and consumables than, say, language arts.
Is there a movement with the arts department to do more instruction with digital arts and things, where kids would pick up skills doing things like Photoshop and animation and stuff like that, where it doesn't consume materials and things like that, and also gives them computer skills?
We've been talking about that, and actually over the last few years, our music teacher and our tech teacher have been working very closely together, and they do some stop motion animation and a few other different type of tech/art integrated programs. Our tech teacher actually prides herself on her STEM activities, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. And so we do a lot of low tech as well, where it's just building cardboard structures and looking at the physics of that. So they have been steering a little bit in that direction, particularly for the upper grades. It's hard to do a lot of that with some of the lower grades. We do coding in our tech classes, but as far as the art classes and the combinations, that's more suited for the upper school students. And I agree. I would love to see more higher end software being used. We're getting some feedback from our high school students that they would like to see some of that as well. The problem with that is, of course, it's expensive, and to get those software licenses. So we're trying to look at I'm pretty adept at this myself, and looking at software companies that either offer us free or low cost software to use. But yeah, that's definitely something we've been not only looking at, but enthusiastically want to see grow.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, I'm glad to hear it's not just all making pottery ashtrays these days.
Oh, we can't make ashtrays anymore.
Yeah. Oh, I certainly did that in the 90s. Not that I needed it. I had a question about down line 2140. There's a contracted services ESL and a Straff Learning Center member. I don't know what these are. I was just wondering.
Stratford Learning Center is a collaborative of all of the public school districts in the region, and we are able to pool funds and purchase contracted services such as school psychology, speech pathology, occupational therapy, that sort of thing for special education related services, and that's what that's in reference to.
Is that a cost-saving thing?
It is less expensive to do it collaboratively with other districts than to fund it ourselves.
And what is the ESL stuff?
English as a second language.
Okay. Do we have kids that don't speak English?
We do have
a very few.
We have
Okay.
We have one student, I believe, right now.
Okay.
I had something to maybe reference or look into, if you guys don't mind. Let's see, 5442, the contract for the copiers and stuff. On the line, like the notes, it says that you guys are already about done with your contract, and I'm pretty sure that the budgeted 15.9 in 2018 and 19 was probably the total cost of the copiers. And if you guys were doing payments, that would make sense. So why your actuals were less than the year after. That might be something you guys can look into, because if you're done with your contract, you can nix that 12,000 proposed for next year's budget, because it will probably just be maintenance at that point.
So that's exactly where we're heading. We used to lease our copiers, and to a tune of around over $16,000, almost $17,000.
Yep.
And we now went to a purchase agreement. So it's a purchase lease. So we're and that drove our costs way down. It also enabled us to not only have a better monthly or a better yearly cost, but also to have a 1 year less contract. But we still have the same life expectancy for the copier. So we're hoping to get an additional year out of the copiers and then sell them back to the company.
Yeah, I used to work for a copier company. That's why I was looking at that.
Oh,
like,
good.
Maybe they shouldn't budget for 12,000 if they're not going to need it. If everything's already paid off, your expense would go down a lot. You're just paying for maintenance at that point.
Yeah, it was a bit of a risk, but I'm glad to hear that you thought it was a good idea too. And I'm hoping
definitely.
that, once this contract's up, we'll get that 1 year kind of break while we look at what the next, trade-in and purchases might be.
Yep. Okay.
So I noticed internet access like almost doubled again after a big raise last year. Is that just a thing that was necessitated with move to remote learning?
Yes, and unfortunately, there's only a few providers in the area that we can deal with. And what happened was we were in a contract with with our provider, and in order to jump to that 300 megabyte limit, we had no control over that cost. We couldn't negotiate around it, and that was a result of the remote. We expect that next year ends our contract with them, that we're going to be able to negotiate a much lower rate. Now that hopefully we won't be in this kind of emergency state. And I think there are several vendors who have exploited that company being one of them, quite frankly.
Yeah. And then just looking through here some more, cable television, there's $1,400 for that. What is the use with the cable television at the school?
We have our cable TV station, channel 13. The town has channel 22. I will say that we've gotten less use out of it, but we do broadcast our school board meetings when they're live in the building, as well as our town meetings and any of the budget meetings, et cetera.
But I mean, who's
It might be a good
is someone
alternative to
watching
that.
them in the building?
I'm sorry, what?
I know, I understand that the town broadcasts on cable television, but I'm not sure why we have to have a cable television subscription for the school.
Well, we use that as a monitor as part of the process.
Just to make sure that it's broadcasting correctly.
That's one of the risks. The main role I use it for, or we use it for, yeah, yes.
So in other words, we're paying $1,400 a year to check that we're broadcasting on cable TV correctly. It's not
then,
no one's watching programs on this or anything.
I would say it's gone down as opposed, when there were special, when inaugurations and things like that. I think now with the internet coming up, that's slowly taking the place of that. So my guess is we'll see.
Anything like that is going to be live streamed on the internet for free.
Yeah.
So I would say if that's the only thing that you need cable television for, it sounds like you don't really need it. I mean, what would be the impact of getting rid of the $1,400 cable television subscription?
Yeah, no, that's good feedback.
Isn't that something that's built into the contract? I don't know if it's the town, John Moran, or but wasn't there a reduction in that fee or something that was built into that contract for our internet services to provide that channel? You're on mute.
I do not know that offhand, so I cannot tell you that.
I think we need to do a better job at negotiating that contract with Comcast, because I thought we used to get that stuff for free.
I would love to see someone help negotiate a contract with Comcast. Yeah, they have not been the easiest company to work with, I will say.
I would love to see some better audio equipment involved in that so that we could actually understand what was being said.
Yeah, well, the nice part about these Zoom meetings is the recordings are perfect.
Yeah.
Moving on there's also there's $18,000 for school board salaries and $4,000 for school board. Well, first, before I get ahead of myself, the $18,000 for school board salaries, why don't we just make school board a volunteer position? I mean, are people doing it for the sweet $3,000 paycheck, or are they doing it because they love the children?
That would be a question, sir, for school board members. None of us are school board members, but myself, I'm an unelected ex officio member.
Yeah. Well, if they're not in the room, let's cut their salary. Well, they're not here. Seriously, that's $18,000 off. You say that you can't cut $1 million off this budget, but you're never going to be able to cut $1 million if you don't start cutting little things like $18,000 here and there. Likewise, I don't know what this $4,000 school board dues and fees. What is that?
That is a membership in the New Hampshire School Board Association, and the New Hampshire School, that covers all of the professional development that they provide for the superintendent and the school board, as well as policy guidance, access to their policy library, And we are required by statute to operationalize policies that are required by the state legislature. And I would say probably a good 60 to 70% of that $4,000 is invested in that policy work. And we also have access to the policy attorneys at NHSBA, which helps cut our legal expenses locally.
So these are essentially compliance with state regulation costs? Okay.
Yep.
Sounds like a reasonable investment.
It's less expensive to do that than it is to pay our school board attorneys to do the same work for us. It would probably cost us 3 to 4 times that much.
And what is this? There's like $7,000 or so for school board expenses. Is that what does that cover?
It generally will cover, my understanding of what we have spent this year has been for the Kidder Law Conference, which is offered annually for school board members. It's basically a professional learning event for 3 days in coming up to speed on new developments in federal and state school law.
And is this a local thing, or is this out of state?
It's a statewide thing.
Okay.
It's offered statewide to all school board members and superintendents.
Do you think that that's
behind the buck if we didn't go?
I'm sorry?
We would be behind the buck a bit if we did not go.
What do you mean?
We would not be as up to speed on the changes in law, changes in requirements, what was going on if our school board members weren't in attendance on this.
So you think it's a valuable use of $7,000 then?
Yes, I do.
Okay. What is GASB 45 compliance?
Tell me what line you're on.
It says Fund 0, Function 2317. It's the top of page.
It's line 271 on the spreadsheet.
271.
It's a
Sorry, I'm using a
requirement.
PDF.
It's a requirement that we have to fill out the GASB form, and it's all about the money that comes into and out of the school district every year. And it's a federally required and state required form that has to be filled out.
Okay. And why does it cost $3,000 some to fill it out?
Because we have to have an auditor fill it out.
So we got to pay essentially an independent person comes in, and that's also what the 10,000 above that for school district audit expenses is?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Okay.
It's the GASB 45. It's an accounting and financial report.
Is that something that we can share with other towns, like the way they do with that Stratford Learning Center stuff? There's no way we can all hire the same auditor?
No.
That's a shame.
I mean, we all do hire the same auditor. They operate similarly to attorneys in that and in fact, I actually inquired of the school board attorney firm if it would be possible to have what I call a criteria type of plan for legal services, where rather than paying by billable hours to the attorneys when we have work that needs to be done, and this could be done with auditors and other professionals. I've done this in Georgia, but I'm not getting a lot of traction here with the idea that we would pay a small monthly retainer and then have unlimited access on certain. For example, if we were paying, let's say, $1,000 a month to the attorneys, we would have access to be able, Nate could call anytime we had a special education issue, and I could call anytime we had a collective bargaining issue, and we wouldn't get billed by the hour, and we would end up spending less money over time. And I have approached the attorneys with this proposal, but I have not, I haven't been able to get a lot of traction with it.
And so if we didn't have an hour, they would get their $1,000, and that's the selling point to them.
Yeah. I think for a small school system, it's a good way. It was offered to me when I ran my in Georgia. We worked with one of the larger attorney firms in Atlanta, and they asked if we would be interested in that program. That's how I learned about it.
So it sounds like there's a lot of contracted services between lawyers and auditors and all these different things. Maybe one thing to do would be to just contact all of these people and tell them that, you've got budget cuts coming and that, just say we're going to have to pay, 5% less this year. That's the way it's going to have to be, or we're going to find a new service provider. So at least try to negotiate some of these things down. I mean, 5% doesn't sound like a lot, but each of these things is $4,000 or $5,000, and there's got to be 20 or 30 in here. You could save the taxpayers some money there. What? I don't know what line item it is. It's a object 5531 telephones. What are these telephones that's costing us $6,000?
Chris, do you want to answer that one?
Sorry, I was muted. Those are our telephone systems. We have a telephone system that's part analog, part digital, and we've had issues with the lines over the years, and but still we have to maintain our telephone system.
I mean, how many phones are we talking here?
We have, I think, 7 lines.
7 lines.
Considering one is dedicated to the what do you call it? The elevator, which is a law.
Yeah.
So and that one doesn't get touched. Then there's another emergency one that we have to have, and then there's 5 that we typically have for communication purposes.
Yeah, so that's like $900 a month for each phone. That seems a little excessive to me. I don't know what a landline goes for these days, but my guess is it's around $40 because it has to compete with cell phone service.
Yeah, I don't know how $900, but
well, $6,000 divided by, what do you say, like 9 phones or something like that?
Well, 6,000 divided by 12 months is $500 a month for all 9
Yeah,
lines.
$900 a year though, per phone. That'd be like what, $70 per month per phone?
Yeah, I don't know.
Either way,
like
it sounds excessive. And do we really need that many lines? I mean, how many concurrent calls does the school get?
Well, I hear what you're saying. We certainly have been talking
Chris,
about
do you
trying
have
to
phone
reduce that.
lines? Do you have phone lines in each classroom? Is that how the teachers contact the office as well? In the
We do
event of
have
an
an
emergency?
intercom/phone system.
But that's not part of this, right?
We've been looking at trying to reduce our phone lines, which is one reason why we have been trying to put in a VoIP system, which again will hopefully reduce some of these costs. However, it's one of those things that it winds up getting cut and pushed back as in every single year. And certainly it's something again that we've been looking at. So I think this is good feedback.
I think it's time to look at the phone situation. Just $900 a phone line sounds pretty excessive. So
Tom, just from experience as a small business owner, I'll say that we moved our office last year, and we shopped around for about 3 months, and we're paying $580 a month for our phone system.
Wow.
It's not, I'm just saying, from experience, if you're looking for a system that has multiple lines that you can transfer line to line, which is what you need in a business, it's not cheap. And in ours, I mean, it's internet. The service actually sucks, but it is kind of what it is.
So you're talking about leasing the equipment and the system and everything.
Yep.
But the school already has the equipment and everything. This is $6,000 paying for just the landline service. I mean, when you talk about your $500 a month, most of that is for equipment rental for your PBX and your servers and everything.
No, we bought all the servers.
No? Okay.
Yeah, we paid for those out of pocket because we use them for other stuff.
But you're leasing, you're getting some equipment or service besides just the landline connection, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay. Because I mean, you can. I won't get into phone stuff, but it's pretty easy to set up a little PBX for yourself. The school can't be taking that many phone calls that they need $6,000 a year.
So maybe a better question is this 6,000 coming from a bid out scope of work, and that's what's come back, and that's what is budgeted to execute on what's wanted, or is this just what the spend is to maintain the mix of systems currently?
It'd be the latter.
Okay. So I mean, one place that, potential reduction could occur is see what that cost is to get this VoIP system in, and, this maybe has to get spent again, but then it's going to go away. Right.
Yeah, we definitely need to, and I flagged that line too, just to make sure it's something that we can
Maybe
focus
ask
more on.
ask Comcast if they'll throw a few phone lines in for free with a $20,000 internet service.
Yeah.
If somebody would
Good luck
volunteer to
with
help
that.
contract with or negotiate with them, that'd be great.
We have a line in here for new equipment and fixtures and new furniture. It's about $8,000 total, maybe a little more.
Which line are you talking about?
Sorry, I don't know. It's
It's
object code 5731. I'm on the PDF, not the Excel. Sorry.
Oh, that's
343 and 344 in the Excel.
Many of us don't have
You
the
need
Excel, Jim.
the
What's the
function.
object? Function and object.
okay.
It's at the bottom of page 9.
2620 5731 and 5733.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that goes towards equipment and fixtures, and replacement of equipment in that category is in our maintenance plan. So any of the equipment used to clean the building, to repair any of the things that we do ourselves are all included in that.
Yeah, but
as well.
this is new equipment and fixtures and new furniture. There's separate line items in here for replacement of furniture and a replacement of equipment, and there's separate line items for repairs and maintenance. So this is
Correct.
this is like $8,000 or $9,000 solely for new equipment and furniture. I mean, is this what's being purchased with this?
The new things that we need. New furniture is tables specifically, and that we're looking at replacing certain other things. And it goes into the new category because we're not replacing a desk for a desk. It might be going from a desk to a table. As odd as that may sound, but because of different materials, we put them into the new equipment line. I'll have to go back and check the new equipment and fixtures versus the furniture.
Are these expenses that could be put off for a year or so?
I'm going to highlight them and have that part of my conversation tomorrow as well. We have put off a lot of replacing equipment, or we've used grant funds to do so. Originally, we had many more items here and in technology, but we're right now we have an $80,000 grant that we're just now fulfilling, which will include technology and some new equipment. So we are looking for other ways to offset this. I don't want you to think that we're throwing everything in it. Quite frankly, this is probably one of the leaner items when it comes to technology and maintenance, or budgets rather, that we've had, because we've been able to use some of the grants through COVID to replace, to offset the cost rather.
Yep.
But I will highlight that though too, to double check.
Going
I have one
above,
quick question. Sorry, Jim, go ahead.
going above to 5430, subcategory 001 and 002, it's repairs and maintenance to the building,
Mm-hmm.
and then maintenance to the heating plant.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just curious on the heating plant. It looks like maybe something was deferred and then it's going to occur this year. Could you just maybe speak to that? And then also, I was just looking for some clarification in what else was in that other line item up above for the repairs to the building.
All right, so we'll start with the repairs, which is the annual water testing, that line, the septic pumping. I mean, all those are the things in there that are the big ticket items. We were able to reduce that number quite a bit. For the typical building repairs, a lot of that reduction is done because of our maintenance director does a lot of this work now himself. He's highly skilled, and we've been able to get training for him over the last several years to replace some of the services and repairs that we would normally contract out.
And that's the facilities director that's referenced under the custodial
Yes.
lines. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. As far as the heating system, the line underneath it says repairs and maintenance to the heating plant. That's a new line for us. That used to go under the contracted services, 2 lines above,
Mm-hmm.
which is where you see the kind of an offset cost. around $7,000.
Sure.
And that's just a new line to have a little more transparency around what we're expending money on, considering that HVAC is such a high cost and important to the building that has been taken out. And that is a cost for them to come in and service our heating systems, redo, put in new filters, flush the system, etc.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome.
So moving down, we're hitting one of the biggest, one of the most expensive things in here is actually transportation. I see regular transportation
Hey,
is,
Tom, before you go up, can I ask one question? I mean, you've asked a lot, so I just don't mind you cutting you off for a second. Just so I can ask this one question.
Yeah.
It's just on, and again, I had to step away for a moment, so I don't know if this was it. But somebody asked about, did anybody ask about the rubbish removal line, number 2620, why it's gone to 18,120? It went up 36% from the past 3 years. It looked like it went down, and then now it did a huge jump.
Yeah, we haven't increased anything for that. That is simply the cost of the company that we're dealing with and their increases. Of course, they will then turn around and say their increases are due to COVID-19 issues and pandemic, et cetera. Again, there are several companies that we deal with that have put us in this predicament. We are going to be I'm going to be reaching out to Chris Sterndale to see if there's anything we can do with the town to perhaps work together to bring this cost down. I'm not really sure how the town deals with their own waste disposal, but that was quite a shock for us.
so the school and the town are not coordinating trash disposal at the school?
No.
Oh, well, that sounds like somewhere that we might be able to have some more efficiency.
I agree. Hopefully, yeah.
Good catch. So back to transportation here, there's 450,000 for the elementary school, 140,000 for Dover High School, 113 for Co-Brown. That's 704,000. And then there's special ed transport. That's another $250,000. So, and if you add on this homeless one, which I'll get to in a minute, that's almost $1 million. So that's that's like 8% of the budget. That's huge. Is there anything that we can do to reduce these costs? Monica, anything?
The one of the issues that we face is that there is not a lot of competition in our area in terms of school transportation. Dale Transportation pretty much runs the show. They have proposed a 3% increase. I mentioned earlier, the school board is going to put a transportation committee together to negotiate with Dale. I have pushed back already and told them that the board will be talking with them. Special education transportation costs, we are obligated to provide transportation for children in both special education and in the homeless situation. And these are federally required items. It's not something that we can really play around with a lot. We can reimburse families by mileage rather than hiring bus service or van service, but that's dependent on a parent or grandparent or caregiver at home who's able to do it.
Is that something that's done in every case now? Is that something that's offered, or is that something that you can do?
Reimbursement of families.
Yeah.
Transportation. I believe Nate can speak to that in more detail, but I believe it's usually, my experience is that's generally offered, and then it's up to parents if they're able, to accept.
So,
Y'all do
which
it in
one
New
would you like me to
Hampshire.
tackle first, homelessness or special education?
Special ed.
Okay, so special education transport, we cannot request a parent to drive students. We can just say that it's an option, but first we have to provide them a bus because we can't allow transportation to be a barrier, and we can't make it a barrier for the family either, meaning that if we say it would be really helpful if you drove, and parents really just want to be helpful for the most part, and it could become a barrier for them even if we're reimbursing them, that is not a practice you want to get into. And it's
So
also
are you currently asking people or encouraging them to do it? You're not, no? Can you start asking them? Because if this is something that
I will
saves the
not.
town money, you will not?
I will not.
You will not? Can we,
No,
is
I
there
will
a-
not. It's not a best practice. It's not something you want to do. It's something that you do if you can't find busing.
Well, it's not about not finding busing. It's about that costs less money. And I mean, this is $247,000 for how many special ed students are there?
So some of our busing is almost an hour each way.
An
We can't-
hour? How is there an hour each way busing?
Because some of these costs are for out of district transportation to a school outside of our district. So I can't ask a parent to drive their child an hour one way and an hour home, or
Well,
an
you
hour-
literally can ask them.
It's not an educational best practice, though, as Nate explained, and I simply will not advocate that we change and adjust federally required services and best practice in order to satisfy the desire to cut costs. That is not a place where we can do that.
Well, you keep saying federally required, but is there a federal law that says you can't offer them the mileage reimbursement?
We can offer a mileage reimbursement if a parent wants to drive. What Nate is explaining, and something that you need to keep in mind is that public school is meant to be a pump, not a filter for children. And special education is one of the places where we spend more money than we are earning per child, perhaps from a family. It may be a situation where a family can't afford it.
Right. I think you're getting away from the thing I'm asking. So if we're allowed to offer parents a mileage reimbursement if they drive their child instead of us having to provide a bus, you're allowed to reimburse them the mileage, correct?
Yes.
And you're legally allowed
it is
to.
it is perceived as a potential barrier if we come to a parent initially to do that. That's what Nate's trying to explain. So that
Okay.
is not going to become our way of doing business. We're not going to do that.
Does every parent that has a special needs child, do they know that this is an option? Have you informed every parent that it is an option that they could get a mileage reimbursement if they transport their child?
We follow the state and federal guidelines on how to communicate with parents.
Is that a yes or a no?
Nate, I'm gonna let you answer that.
I do not call each parent and tell them that I can reimburse them for mileage if they choose to drive.
So there's currently parents that have special needs students that potentially do not know that they could be getting a mileage reimbursement if they drive their child to the school? Yes or no?
I already told you yes. Would you?
So so now that we've established that there are parents that have special needs students that could be getting a mileage reimbursement to drive their child to school, I think it's imperative for you guys to do your job and let these people know that they could be getting a mileage reimbursement, because not only does that save the town a lot of money by not having to have these vans or whatever is driving these kids around, but if you give these people a mileage reimbursement and they're driving their kid an hour to school and back, that's 2 hours a day that they could be spending with their child and having quality time with their child instead of their child being with some stranger in a
As
van.
the parent of two special needs children who are now adults, I can assure you, I was unable to drive my children, one of whom was in and out of district placement in Massachusetts, because I had to work.
Okay, well, that's your particular situation. You're
Exactly.
one person out of many.
And
How do we know? How do
special
we
education,
know
Tom,
how many parents are
special
able to do this or
education,
want to do
Tom,
this if
is
they don't even know that
designed
that's an
to
option?
deal with individual situations with individual families. I'll be glad to provide you with contact information for our state directors of special education so they can answer your questions in more detail. I think that would be quite helpful for you.
What would be helpful for me is if you would agree to let every parent of special needs children to know that there's an option to get a mileage reimbursement. It sounds like this is something that they don't know.
I'd like to just say,
I'm sorry.
Tom, you're not going to get what you want by arguing this point. They've all said they're not going to do that. So I think if we could move forward in your next item. On
Oh,
the
we
budget.
can move forward. All I need to know is who I got to talk to then. Who is above you guys? What are you, superintendent?
So can I just state one more fact in this, and then
Yeah.
I'm done? You are looking at a discrimination lawsuit.
It's
because
not a
if you
discrimination
start
lawsuit
paying-
to offer someone a mileage reimbursement.
Are you going to do that for all your regular ed students as well?
Yeah, you probably should. If there's a bus route that's costing $10,000 a year and 2 students are on it, and you could save half of that money by giving them a mileage reimbursement, there's no cost to the town to offer that. The worst that can happen is the
one
parent
person
says no. The
you have
best
to
thing.
offer it.
What?
You're screwed. If one person says no, you still have to offer it. You're not in a win situation here.
Well, with the individual people, you definitely are.
Why would you do that when you could, I mean, you're out of pocket expense to drive your own car, your own time where you could be working when you
Well,
you
you get to spend that time with your child. Like, isn't that good? Isn't that quality time with your child?
Are you probably not if you're driving?
What do we, I mean, what's the point we're trying to get to here? This is kind of crazy. I don't know. if
The
this is how
point
you
that I was
normally
trying
do
to get
business,
to is
Tom.
that there's a potential way to save. There's a $247,000 expense here, and there's an identifiable plan for how to reduce that spending. And there's 2 people here, Nate and Monica, that are refusing to inform parents of their right to get a mileage.
Or you have 2 licensed administrators, and I, for one, have defended a special education lawsuit for a school system. I prefer not to put Nottingham through that.
Has the school, just regarding this, has the school looked at operating its own motor pool at all? Is there, for this amount of money, is that something that's doable to both cover the vehicles and the salary of a driver to handle that?
We don't have a motor pool. Part of the reason I believe for that is because of how difficult it is to find people, even to find bus drivers to work for Dale Transportation. We're dealing with a situation in a neighboring school district now where we're having to do double bus runs because we can't find people. And so for the school to try to absorb that and to take on that hiring when we can barely get paraprofessionals and substitutes, I don't think would be, I mean, we'd have to invest in the cost of the vehicles. And if we can't hire people to drive them, that's a waste of funds.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I just think at the line items we're talking about could get out of vehicles and have some pretty attractive salaries for folks. And potentially not be dealing with another company.
We have gone for the last 3 years with 7 buses instead of 8 buses that we need, even when Dale Transportation has offered paying people to be a bus driver while they're learning to be a bus driver and offering them a $1,500 stipend if they work for us for 90 days. So I can't imagine that there are going to be a lot of people jumping down our necks to take a job.
I don't know about that. I mean,
It's
it's my understanding that the bus company, when you guys decided that you would continue to pay them for transportation costs, even though the school was shut down during the pandemic, it's my understanding, even though you continued to pay them, they did not continue to pay their bus drivers.
They did.
Did
pay
they?
their bus, yes.
Yes, they
Are you
did.
sure? Oh,
Yes,
maybe
sir.
in our town, but I know in some towns they didn't. But
Well-
if you're telling me that the costs are prohibitive because there's basically no competition to this Dale company, then maybe it is time that the town at least did a quick estimate of what it would cost to buy 7 school buses and to hire some people.
And I'm not,
At the
well,
very
hold on,
least, that might be a
hold on, I'm not-
negotiation point that
I
you
wasn't
could
even
use
suggesting the school buses. I was only suggesting for the limited number of special ed students.
So,
and even
the
other
that's a
districts,
good case too, but even with the school buses, it's $700,000. That'll buy a few school buses and pay for some drivers.
yeah, but not
and at the
8,
very
but-
least,
but
if you
not
tell
8.
Dale Transportation that you're looking at starting your own school busing and they're going to lose out on all that revenue, you might actually have a stronger negotiation hand with them.
So if I may, we do have a transportation committee that meets when their contracts are up, and we are looking at negotiating a new contract with Dale, I think. And the school board mentioned that today at their meeting, that they're going to be looking at what those negotiations might look like, and bringing up both those points are great ideas for that committee to look at.
Chris, has the transportation committee priced out what it would just total ballpark what it would cost to buy school buses and
I don't
paid bus
know.
drivers?
The last contract, I don't believe that was partly what they were looking at, because there actually was competitive bids.
Well, it would be great if someone could price that out, and at the very least, we would know, if we're getting a decent price out of Dale or not. It would be a negotiation point with them. So to close out the transportation thing, I'll get to this one, and I brought this up at one of the school deliberative things, or budget meeting. There's this homeless transportation thing, and I've had it explained to me a number of times, and I believe Nate here has said that it's federally required, but by my understanding of it, it's not, and it's not even something that's really used. My understanding, the way it was explained to me, was that if a family moves out of Nottingham to say Barrington or Dover, that this is used to bus them back into Nottingham to continue going to school here. Am I correct in that?
No, you are not.
Okay, can you explain it to me then?
Yes, it is federally mandated under the McKinney-Vento Act. What it is if you have a student who endures homelessness while they are currently in school, so you have a Nottingham student who, due to no fault of his own or his parents, they lose their home and they get displaced and they're doubled up with a family friend or living in a motel in Barrington. They have the right to continue to come to Nottingham. In order to come to Nottingham, at that point, we do look at reimbursing them for mileage or getting them a bus back and forth, and we split that cost with whatever town they are currently residing in.
But if they're residing in a town, if they're staying with family or they're in a motel, they're not homeless.
You are
I believe
wrong.
you
have to look. No,
Federal definition, there is a federal definition of homeless child. And as Nate said, the McKinney-Vento Act outlines those guidelines.
Yeah.
And he's just described for you what the guidelines are. And the cost is shared by both of the districts.
And,
All right,
and so,
I'll go read the McKinney-Vento Act.
Yep.
All right, I'll go
Yes,
read
sir.
it. I'll figure out what this is about then.
so are these proposed dollars there as a line item to draw against?
So I reduced them based on current usage. As of right now, you're not seeing an increase based on distant learning, and not many people are claiming it. But in the past, you've used a good portion of your homeless transportation lines. So we didn't want to zero it out, because if you zero it out, then you still have to provide it if it's needed. And then at that point, you'd go into deficit spending in another line. So that's a safety net. And it is a federally required program for that.
Thanks for the clarification.
We are funded by the federal government for it. It's part of the federal categorical grant funds.
So it's a funded mandate.
Yes, federally mandated items are federally funded.
Okay.
So in your Title I, you have a small set aside, but it's never enough to pay for all the McKinney-Vento stuff. So you do have to budget for it. So.
Tim, can I make a recommendation that we move this along?
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Do any other budget committee members have anything to add or question on the transportation?
Well, just one quick thing on transportation. Make sure that the transportation committee does study the actual need for high school busing, because it is not a requirement. So there's potential savings there, but I know that it comes with other risks. But I would actually like to go back to the high school tuition item that Monica spoke about in the slides.
Mm-hmm.
You basically said that tuition was going up less than 5% overall.
3, I think.
Right.
It's
But
between
depending on the school.
It's between 3 and 5%
Right.
depending on the school.
Yes, that's why I said less than 5% overall.
Uh-huh.
Okay, but you're showing 22.4 and 9.3% increases. Are we really going to have that much increase in enrollment for high school next year? Or whatever, yeah.
Those numbers are predicted are brought up by your exiting seniors and your entering eighth graders.
Okay, so that disparity is that much. Plus you have 5 move-ins, it looks like.
Yeah.
Slated potential move-ins. That seems high. So it just seems really high. So that's why I
Yeah.
don't have the enrollment numbers in front of me. So I'll have to go back and look at that.
While we're on the tuition one, I see here there's one student going to Portsmouth High School at almost $19,000. Is that a case where the parents are paying the balance between that and the cost at, say, Dover?
That was a student who was approved. It is a student who is a senior this year. And the student had been approved as an 8th grader to go to Portsmouth High School. And past practice has been to allow the student to finish school where they started, is the way that this was explained to me when I inquired about it.
Sure,
So-
I think kids should be able to go to any school they want. My question is just the way that it's being paid. Are taxpayers paying for the entire $19,000?
So I think, are you saying that this person was kind of grandfathered in, like this was the old
Yes.
policy and they let them stay? Because there's other
Yes.
there's other Nottingham residents who are going to Portsmouth who are not costing the town $19,000. Is that right?
That's
I don't know about other students, but this particular item was explained to me as essentially what you just said, a grandfathering situation.
So you said they're a senior this year?
My understanding is that they will be, a rising senior.
Okay, so they're a junior this year and will be a senior in this
Will be a
budget.
senior in the fall of 2020.
Okay, just wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
Okay, so can the school board just request that they pay the balance to reimburse the taxpayer back to, what is it? What's Dover costing us nowadays?
They changed that policy a few years back. It used to be that the Dover rate was the Dover rate and parents paid the difference
To go to
between-
Co-Brown, right?
to go to Co-Brown or any other school.
Yeah.
But the school board changed that policy, I don't know how many years ago.
Was that
And
the
it
school
went before-
choice,
it
the
went
school
before
choice
the
thing?
voters. It
Yeah.
went for the voters. It was on the ballot.
But that was to make Co-Brown a school of record, right? So that you could choose Co-Brown or Dover and you didn't have to pay the extra for Co-Brown. I don't think that had anything about other schools, right? It was just about Co-Brown, right?
That was my understanding.
It was,
about Brown.
the way it was written, it applied to everything.
Really?
I'll have to go look at
I'm
that.
pretty
I thought it
sure.
was making Co-Brown a school of record, but it's been like 5 or 6 years, so I don't remember. Either way, I mean, I'm all for letting kids pick which high school they go to as long as the parents want to pay however much more it costs. I mean, honestly, we should just call up all the school districts around here and see who wants to offer the best rates for high school. And I mean, why just Dover and Co-Brown? Why not open it up to other places if they're willing to take students for less money?
Oh, we could bus them. Get a couple more buses. Send
Well, I
them
mean, if
down
the
to
parents
Salem.
want to go to a different town, they can provide the transportation. I'm assuming we're not busing some kid to Portsmouth every day. Are we required to provide busing for regular students?
Not high school.
Not high school.
Yeah, so that's not an issue. I mean, has the school board ever reached out to other towns about high schools?
I can't answer. I don't know what the school board has done with regard to high school. My experience is limited to just this year.
All right, maybe I'll bring that up to him. Is there any, because you had mentioned that this was just the first draft of the budget and that you guys had gone over this and you had already cut stuff. Is there anything that we haven't mentioned that you've cut that we should be aware of so that we don't, when we go through here again, we don't mark it up twice?
Chris, I think you have the most recent version and you're going to need to work on that tomorrow, right?
Correct.
Yep.
So Monica and Chris, you weren't on the call at the time, but we were talking about our schedule. And Tom, I think this kind of leads into your questioning is we're hoping that you can get us this next draft after the school board meeting tomorrow as soon as possible, because at our next meeting, we would like to review it in more detail as a committee. And then we will need to set up another meeting, most likely with you. I mean, there is a meeting on the calendar for the school department heads on December 17th. Our thought was that that would be the time that we could then review it in more detail, the second and hopefully maybe possibly third draft that you're able to present to us.
Okay. And Tim, I have a question that should work fine. I have a question about the meeting with the department heads. Would you define for me what you mean by department heads with the school? Because we're not a high school that's departmentalized.
So I think as part of the SB2 process, Monica, which we've just moved into, that's one of the pieces, I guess, a meeting that's added. And we've always done it with the town since the school, I guess both are going to be the same now, running the same. We added in that department head meeting, which I've learned over the past week that you don't have department heads or many that would attend that type of meeting. So we thought at that point it would be the three of you potentially attending that meeting to kind of go into more detail with us and where we could drill down on some more items to reduce the or bring the budget back in line with what we're looking for.
Okay, that makes sense.
Chris, is there a possibility, getting back to technology, is there a possibility of maybe waiting a year to get some of the software and some of the equipment that you have in the budget?
Well, we've cut a lot of the equipment out already. So we are equipment light at this point in time, but we're going to try and trim what we can. I'll go back to our curriculum director who has really organized a lot of the software and see if there's areas we can trim. I know of off the top of my head, I'm going to be looking at probably maybe $7,000 to $8,000 worth of software that I'm going to suggest just that we defer. Okay. So I think, you know, and we can look for other sources too. Again, we're always looking for grant sources to try and fund these things. And this is certainly an important time for us to do that, considering the percentage that we see the budget at now.
What is that? What is that field trip I saw in there for like 10 grand? Transportation for a field trip?
Oh, that's for all the field trips, I believe. That's the field trip transportation line.
Are you going to be taking field trips with COVID?
Well, we're hoping that for next year.
That's the following year, Tom.
No, I know, but who knows where we're going to be?
Yeah, we're hopeful.
I don't see this going away in a year, do you?
Well, I'm crossing my fingers. No, I actually do. I mean, I am hoping that we'll be able to, looking at the news and where we head. So we just want to be prepared just in case.
Tim, I wanted to just revisit with you the December 17th date. That is the Northwood School Board meeting night, and Nate and I attend that meeting.
Excuse me? Sean is waiting to get back in the meeting. He's in the waiting room.
No, he's not.
He wants someone.
No, I'm right here.
In.
I'm right here. He let me back in a while ago. Thank you.
Oh,
though.
did they? Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Would it be possible, I don't know what folks' work schedules look like, Tim, but would it be possible maybe to do a 5 o'clock meeting?
I think that might be really difficult.
That'd be hard because Northwood School Board meets at 6:30 on the 17th.
I have a school facilities meeting on Thursday at 4:30, I believe. So I wouldn't.
Yep.
That wouldn't work.
Yeah, you're right.
do you have a budget meeting on the 10th?
We do, and the town's presenting the first draft of the town budget, proposed budget for next year, Chris.
Okay, thank you.
Were you thinking to switch that, Chris?
Well, I think on those offset weeks is when the other districts don't have board meetings, so I think the 10th would be open, correct, Monica?
I'm just looking.
The 10th is not open. We have.
It's ringing a bell in my head.
No,
We've
we
got
have
something.
a public hearing for Northwood.
For
a
Northwood,
fund,
yeah.
And then we have public hearing for the SAU, then the joint board, and then we have a Northwood School Board meeting after. So the 10th is out straight.
So for the 17th, Nate and Chris, is that something you'd be able to attend, Monica, if you're needed at the Northwood meeting?
I'll be able to be there.
I know that Chris could. Nate, do you report on the first or the second board meeting in Northwood?
I know that the Northwood board was asking me to attend because we're finalizing that budget, but and that was the one that I believe you would ask me to attend. I'll try to do whatever it is that you need. I can also, if the budget committee wants, because my line, the 1200 lines, there weren't too many questions in them, and I don't see many changes coming up. But if you want to give me questions ahead of time, I'd be more than happy to answer some of them if needed. But I can try to be there. It is a Northwood School Board meeting, but I can definitely try to be there.
With all due respect, I think it behooves us to find a time that Monica can be there. Maybe more so than Nate, even considering what you just said. Because I'm not going to be able to respond to the questions by then that are typically addressed by the SAU level.
Yeah.
But I will do my best, obviously.
So I guess what we'll have to do is, if you can get us the second version of that budget as soon as possible. The draft version, we'll talk about the draft on Thursday, is possibly this coming Thursday. We'll add that to our agenda, is to ask more questions. Monica, you're able to attend this Thursday, correct?
Yeah, I was going to send Nate as my designee to the Northwood board meeting this Thursday so I could attend your meeting.
Okay, so if you can get us the second version of this budget, and we'll review the default budget and the second version of this budget as well, and then we'll have to look at something for another Thursday in the future to try to get at least one of you to come and discuss.
Is there a different day of the week that we can meet?
I'd have to look at the calendars again. I mean, we set this up like a month and a half ago based upon the select board meeting, the school board meetings, everything else. And we worked in these Tuesday meetings, and these were difficult as it was. So, but I can definitely take a look at the calendar and see if we could potentially do a Tuesday night. I don't know if a Tuesday night would work better, because I know that's not school board meeting nights. It's Monday and Wednesdays for Nottingham.
Yeah. Nottingham transition team meets on Tuesdays. My problem, Tim, is that I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm committed 13 nights a month between the three boards and the joint board. So I'm trying to, all of the budget committees for the towns are meeting simultaneously, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, we're all on the same timeline. So, So yeah, I mean, we're trying to do what we can to make sure that you're involved in the process. But we've got the town hearing coming up, and we want to make sure that what we're voting on is a budget that we agree upon. So
Can I just ask a sort of a recap question? Is it the intent to get the budget down around 4% increase?
That is the school board's goal.
So you need to cut $487,000.
Yep.
I would encourage the school board to try to make it a 0% increase. I think this has been a really terrible year for a lot of people, and I think the best thing we could do for the taxpayers is not give them a $500 tax hike. Give them a real choice. When we go in on election day, I want them to have a choice between the default budget and a budget that actually saves them a little money, or at least doesn't give them a $500 tax hike. It's a real insult to the taxpayers when they go in and they get to vote on the budget and their choices are a tax hike or the default tax hike.
We haven't seen the default budget yet. That 4% number, where's that coming from?
The
I have no idea.
4% number is the school board's goal.
Okay, but for the
Don't
default,
want to exceed 4%.
okay. Are there any more questions from the committee on the proposed budget? We do have somebody from the public that has joined us, I believe. So I want to, if E.T. Reed would like to unmute and has a question.
Gene, that's you.
Oh, Gene Reed.
Am I there?
Yep.
I missed the early part of the meeting. I thought on the agenda tonight was the default budget night. Did I miss something?
Yeah, that wasn't the posted agenda was for the default budget for the town and the proposed budget for the school.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Gene, on Thursday night, we will be doing the default budget for the school. And that will be posted by tomorrow, end of day.
Okay, thank you much.
You're welcome.
If you all have additional, if you're like me, after the meeting, you'll look at it and think about if you have special education and student services specific questions, if you can email those to me in advance, I can go over those with Nate to be able to provide you answers on Thursday night. I'm pretty good at being able to answer a lot of the questions ad hoc, but there may be some that I can't. So if I can get those in advance, because I'll be sending Nate to the Northwood School Board in my place.
And just as a procedural item, if you do have questions for Monica, you should email them to me, and I would forward all the questions together at once, representing the budget committee up to Monica.
Good, thanks.
Yep. Any other questions anybody has? I want to celebrate the fact that we had somebody from the public attend our meeting. It's the first Zoom meeting we've had somebody from the public attend. Thank you, Gene. Well, in that case, I think, again, the plan of attack will be for us to get the default budget ASAP, and the second version of this budget, it sounds like probably at some point on Thursday. Doesn't give us a whole lot of time to review. It's not the ideal situation, but I think it's better than waiting another week or two. And then on Thursday, I'll look at the calendars for the other municipal business and see if we can come up with another date. Okay.
Well, thank you all so much. It's been very illuminating for me. This is my first experience with New Hampshire municipal finance, and it is quite educational for me tonight.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Nate, for coming in. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Always good to see you guys.
Have a good night.
You too.
Good night.
Night.
Take care, guys.
Good night.
So as a committee, I didn't put on our committee reports for tonight. I was going to add that to the agenda either for this coming Thursday or the following Thursday. So I don't want to take any more of your time. Does anybody have any questions or concerns?
I will not be at Thursday. I'll be late into Thursday's meeting due to my selectmen's meeting that I have to attend.
Okay.
I'm just curious, is it typical?
Where's your
that-
Harry Potter skills, John?
What?
Where are your Harry Potter skills? You know, where you go to one meeting and then you just set the clock back and you go to the other one?
I'll try, yeah.
What was that, Jim?
I was asking, is it typical that the default budget would come in similar or at the same as the new proposed budget? And if so, what happens then?
It's typically less.
The default's typically less.
Yeah, it really should be the other way around. I mean, the default is, here's last year's budget plus inflation. And I think our duty to the taxpayers as the budget committee is to control spending to the point where we're not going to the default budget. The default budget should be the higher of the two choices that we present to the taxpayers on election day.
Yeah, I was just curious more historically what we've seen. All my sentiments are the same, Tom. I just wanted to figure out what's happened in the past.
I feel like it's been both ways. Sometimes it's higher, sometimes it's lower, sometimes it's about the same.
Is the public still invited to speak?
Excuse me, Ed? I'm Gene.
Yeah. May I speak to the default budget procedure?
Sure.
Thank you. The default budget, I would advise the committee members to review the procedure for a default budget, in that one-time items from my memory are to be excluded from the default budget. There are other items that are to be excluded from the budget. So what Tom said, with all due respect, Tom, I think it should be less than what last year's budget was once you subtract those. I will defer to the RSA on that and would advise the board to review that before that meeting. Thank you.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, because there was like there was like $97,000 for building plans or something. So that would be a one-time expense. So Gene might be correct. The default budget could be lower.
Yeah, correct. It's debt obligations and one-time expenditures, and then the only thing that really can go up are those contractual items. And similar to the town, like you had mentioned, looking at electricity and utility costs and whether or not those increase. But I know that we did, Gene, to address your question, we did review that as a budget committee back in September when we reviewed the process of SB2, is some of those items that have to remain and the items that can be removed. And I know they're aware of it as well. And I think, and they've done it in the past, but I think one of the reasons we're getting presented the default budget afterwards is because it's taking them more time to review it. And their current business administrator works 3 days a week for 3 different school districts. So.
Okay. Well, it sounds like our job next meeting is going to be to make sure that everything that needs to be removed has been removed from the default budget.
Correct. And I'm hoping that they'll have that to us, because I think they've already reviewed it, or they're reviewing it tomorrow night. So we don't have a whole lot of time to review both. I mean, I work full time. I don't know about the rest of you, but getting reviewing a 12-page spreadsheet is going to be tough. But the more we can do beforehand will be better, and have those questions ready. But again, if any of you do have questions that you would like to be asked of the school administration of specific line items, just send them to me, and I'll make sure I forward them all up to them.
May I one more time? This is Gene. Where can I review that default budget before the meeting?
I don't believe you can review it before the meeting. I think it's available at the meeting.
I can send it to you when I get it, Gene.
Thank you.
Tom, I'm not sure if you can until it's made public at the actual meeting. I can look it up, but I'm not sure if items can be shared with the public prior to the actual public meeting. Am I right on that, Michael or John?
I think so.
I don't know. I mean, technically, by right to know, he should be able to get it anyway. So it doesn't matter. I mean, by asking for it, he's getting it at the same time as us, more or less. So I don't feel that there's anything wrong with anybody sharing any of the documents we are supposed to review in preparation for a meeting.
I agree. I'll put it this way. If someone wants to send me the RSA that says I can't send it to Gene, I won't. But if no one wants to point out how it's not supposed to happen, when I get it, I'll just forward it to Gene.
Absolutely.
Thank you all. Good night.
Bye, Gene.
Night, Gene.
So I look forward to, well, actually, I need a motion to adjourn the meeting unless there's any other questions.
So moved.
Seconded.
Who seconded?
Tom.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 I'm gonna go down the list. I gotta do it this way. Roll call. Kathy Brosnan,
Yes.
Tom Bukovitz,
Aye.
John Decker,
Aye.
Tim DeBrez and I. Sean Green.
Yes.
Oh, Sandra, you already seconded. I'm sorry. Michelle King.
Aye.
Michael Keister.
I'm going to abstain.
Tom LeVay.
Yes.
John Warren.
Yes.
And Jim Stevens.
Yes.
All
And
right.
Michael gets to
Aye.
sit there on the computer all night.
Yep.
Michael, yeah, Michael wants to stay all night. He's having such a good time.
I'm going to leave the meeting open for you, Michael. Just hit the end recording button when you're done.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Points, 2 points. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Night.